All right, welcome everyone to the volunteer safety session of the 2023 Volunteer Engagement Series. My name is Sydney Chutreau, and I'm the Director of Volunteer Engagement at the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability. I want to give a big thank you to Arnetta Macklin with MIFA, who's going to speak on a new and really interesting topic here shortly. But before I turn it over to her, I want to thank you all again for supporting me in this ongoing training opportunity, and for everyone who completed the planning survey that I sent out last year. The suggestions you made proved to be extremely valuable. So last month we had over 100 people register, and Arnetta, she's currently holding our record at about 112 people registered, so woohoo. And we had the most attendance for a live session that we've had in the last 2 years last month. So for anyone new to the series, if you missed last month or any presentations that we've had from 2020 to today's presentation will be posted on the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disabilities YouTube channel. By the end of the day tomorrow, I'll have this presentation and any kind of materials or resources in a follow-up email to you all. I do want to do my typical disclaimer that these webinars are being recorded, so please keep information confidential when we talk about volunteers, clients, partners in the community, things of that nature. Be sure to put yourself on mute to reduce the background noise for our speaker, and also turn your videos off if you don't want to be recorded and put on YouTube. Totally up to you. And also, if you have any questions, please type those into the chat box and we'll address them at the end of the session during the Q&A portion. It's important to remember that everything we talk about on these webinars is not a requirement for you to implement in your programs. Let me say that again, not a requirement for you to implement in your programs. These are simply best practices through research and personal experience. If you do find something or hear something that you want to implement as a strategy with your organization, just make sure you have the support of your supervisor and upper management before moving forward. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Arnetta to introduce herself and start our discussion on volunteer safety. Arnetta, thank you so much again for being here with us today.
Thank you, Sydney. I want to thank you as well as the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability for this opportunity to share with you this afternoon. I too want to put out a disclaimer that I am not a law enforcement expert. Again, the majority of this information was provided by the Memphis Police Department's Community Outreach Program, as well as some best practices gained from our experiences. Next slide, please. And I will turn my camera off. As an overview, we will discuss background on MIFA, our crime history and our response, volunteer safety and impact, proactive tips to assist with volunteer safety, as well as open it up to a discussion on volunteer safety. Next slide, please. What is MIFA? MIFA stands for the Metropolitan Interfaith Association. It was founded in 1968 after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in our city, when church and community leaders wanted to address issues such as poverty, hunger, and social division in Memphis. Issues over 50 plus years later we are still dealing with today. MIFA began as a volunteer-driven advocacy agency and has since evolved into a professional social service nonprofit that serves 40,000 people annually. We have approximately 1,000 volunteers that help fulfill our vision of uniting the community through service. And our mission is to support the independence of vulnerable seniors and families in crisis through high-impact programs. MIFA has a variety of family programs that have interventions ranging from utility assistance to emergency shelter and permanent housing. And these programs provide services to stabilize families with a goal of preventing homelessness. Now, as members of the Aging Network, most of you are familiar with MIFA's programs for seniors, such as our Meals on Wheels program, which provides 3,800 home-delivered and congregate meals daily. Last year, we served over 500,000 meals to homebound seniors and to over 15 congregate sites throughout Shelby County. Thanks for the hand clap, Sydney. Appreciate that. Definitely a team effort. We also have a long-term care ombudsman program, which trains volunteers to advocate for seniors in long-term care facilities. And many of our volunteers in that program have served an average of 7 years or more. And the more tenured volunteer ombudsman representatives served more than 15 years and even continued during the pandemic. So right now, I want to just pause and give a shout out to all of MIFA's engagement, meals, and ombudsman team members who are on the call today. Thank you. Next slide, please. Showing some love. Yes. Now, as MIFA team members, we are blessed to see the good in Memphis and Shelby County every day through our programs. However, just like many other cities, we too have been impacted by rising crime rates. Last year, an elderly volunteer couple and a staff driver were carjacked within weeks of each other. This was an anomaly. And our MIFA team members and volunteers are so resilient. So I asked one of our volunteers, why do you continue to volunteer for Meals on Wheels? And just give her a disclaimer and call her Leslie. And Leslie says, I continue to deliver because the clients we serve are homebound and need our help. The warm meal and smile, the fear away from both me and the client. And with that, we continue to move forward. And in order to safeguard against incidents like this happening in the future, we added tracking to our vehicles with whip around and new vehicle wraps. And that's what you're looking at now, that make our vehicles visible to the community and letting criminals know that, you see that, we do not have cash on board. And this hopefully will serve as a deterrent in preventing future crimes. So the next slide, please. And the next few slides, again, are coming from the Memphis Police Department's community outreach program. We had officers to come. We had 3 officers to come multiple days to meet personally with our MIFA volunteers in person and on Zoom. And so these recommendations in the next few slides came from them. And the first one is travel in pairs. When possible, you know, we've always heard that adage, there's safety in numbers. This is really true when delivering meals. And I also want to say, even though these slides focus on Meals on Wheels, a lot of these recommendations can be applied to your personal life as well as other volunteer programs. So again, it's very important to have an extra set of eyes, and this also facilitates prompt Meals on Wheels delivery. Next slide, please. Travel light. It is best to keep your personables and valuables at home and avoid carrying a purse or bulky wallet. Now, for those of us, we won't tell our ages, this is where the old fanny pack comes in handy. A lot of personal information can be stored on your phone. So again, travel light is very, very important. Next slide. Stay vigilant. It is important to assess your surroundings and maybe even consider making the block before stopping for a delivery. And when you are not delivering meals, also consider going different ways home to other destinations. It also helps with your memory, you know, so don't always just have a routine. Try to switch it up a bit. Next slide. This one is specifically for Meals on Wheels, and that's to call first. As you know, a lot of our seniors have mobility issues, so it is helpful to call each client before you arrive to ensure a quicker delivery. And the police department also suggests that you park on the street, turn off your vehicle, and lock your vehicle during delivery. Again, specifically for Meals on Wheels, but can be applied to you personally as well as other volunteer opportunities as well. Next slide, please. Walk with confidence. Look people in the eye. Address them with a firm good morning or good afternoon, and let them know that you are delivering Meals on Wheels. Next slide. Identify yourself. The majority of criminals, they really know that we're doing a really good service for the community, and in some cases could be delivering to their own grandparent or aunt or cousin or relative. But what MIFA did, and again, we did get some feedback from our volunteers, is that we have these volunteer magnets. We have a picture with those, with that one of our faithful volunteers there. We also have some more that actually has MIFA Meals on Wheels volunteer on them. Bright green shirt, that's our MIFA color right there. And you may not can see it, but she also has a whistle, a little whistle to help deter crime as well. And again, the car magnets, t-shirts, and we also have some safety vests so that you can be quickly identified in the community. Next slide. Trust your gut. If it doesn't look right or if it doesn't feel right, guess what? It's probably not right. We tell our volunteers not to deliver in these circumstances and to notify MIFA. The police department offered to even accompany MIFA staff and volunteers in some of our high crime areas, which was really, really great. Next slide. Know your precincts. It's so important that in the event you do feel threatened, it's important to know where your local police departments are, as well as your fire departments for emergency assistance. Next slide. That's where we were talking about make some noise. I actually was going to blow the whistle, but they are in such a demand in MIFA, we don't have any more. The criminals want to strike quickly without attracting attention. So when you carry a whistle, that helps you to not feel as threatened. And if you don't have a whistle, guess what? A loud yell will do. Help! This oftentimes distracts criminal acts. And again, making noise is a great way to deter crime. Next slide, please. In the unfortunate event you come face to face and are confronted with a criminal, do not resist. We were really blessed and fortunate that there were not any serious injuries to our meals driver as well as our meals volunteers because they gave them what they asked for. Do not resist. Material items are replaceable. Now, I want to take a minute to give a shout out to our mobile volunteer cart. This was developed when we switched to a drive-by pickup during the pandemic. On there, you see the magnets that I've referred to, but it also has route sheets, masks, a lot of the things that our Meals on Wheels hand sanitizer, a lot of the Meals on Wheels volunteers look to this as a resource because we have great snacks, and it changes with the season. So that's kind of, you see the little red and pink, that's for Valentine's Day. So we'll change again, but just want to give that shout out as a helpful tip as well, to do a drive-by for volunteers, especially when we have pandemic circumstances. Next slide, please. So those tips, again, came to you from the Memphis Police Department's Community Outreach Program. These volunteer safety tips I'm going to give you are some best practices that we as MIFA team members have found to be effective. First, regular communication is key. Not just when it's a crisis, but throughout the year. When this came, we knew media attention was going to be on it, so we decided to send an email to our volunteers. We also have a quarterly newsletter that we give tips not only on volunteer safety, but other risk management issues as well. And again, get the survey back from the volunteers. There were some volunteers that said, you know what, I don't really feel comfortable wearing all that gear. I kind of don't want to be on the radar. Other volunteers said it's absolutely essential. Again, you customize your volunteer safety program based on the needs of your volunteers. And also, we suggest reaching out to your own local law enforcement agency to customize a safety plan. Again, whether you're in a metropolitan or rural setting, it's very important for you to reach out and have a relationship with your law enforcement agencies. Another tip that MIFA has done as an organization for our staff is we've actually been through active shooter training. And we've also had cybersecurity training. So these are just some other best practices that we have implemented in addition to what I've shared with you from our Memphis Police Department's Community Outreach Program. Now, I'm going to turn my camera on now. And Sydney, did we have any questions? We want to open it up. Does anyone else have any questions or best practices?
Nothing's come into the chat just yet, but I have a couple questions that you jogged my memory on, so I'll get us started. So you talked about your two volunteers who unfortunately had that incident. How did they report that to you? Do you have a reporting process? And can you kind of give us a little bit of detail on what that process is?
Great question. We actually have a number on the route sheet for volunteers to call. So we have someone at MIFA that has a cell phone. So we try to answer that as promptly as possible. And so that's when we were first notified. So again, making sure, and we also have a mobile app. And on that mobile app, that number is also, so it's accessible to the volunteer at all times. So again, a telephone number that a MIFA staff person has, so when an incident like that happens, we're quickly able to respond.
Great. You have a lot of really cool gear. And I love the magnets because that can be for, SHIP volunteers who go out to a counseling session or senior center volunteers who are, doing some kind of transportation, or our Transportation My Ride volunteers. Did you get any grants? Or I know that can cost a lot of money, and I know a lot of us are struggling in the finance department. So were there any kind of grants or anything like that you can maybe give us some tips and tricks on how to be able to purchase some of those neat items?
Well, we did have a partnership for some of the safety vests, and I didn't actually show. Yeah, we did have a volunteer in there with the safety vests, with some of the safety vests. So some of your corporate and foundation partners, there you go. Corporate and foundation partners help with that, particularly Meals on Wheels. If you have corporations or congregations for that matter that also deliver meals, sometimes they are good resources for grants. And again, not only for their members and employees, but obviously something for the general community as well. So again, partnering with corporations and foundations.
Those were the two questions that kind of stuck out to me. Okay, we had something come into the chat. Here we go. Our My Ride volunteers also have magnets and love the whistle idea. So, do you know about how expensive the whistles are? I mean, you're out of stock, so you might need to purchase some more.
Absolutely. It's based on the bulk, so I can't remember, but once we bought like 500 or so, and anybody from MIFA that knows that answer can unmute yourself. But I do remember that the larger the quantity, the less expensive it was. Less than $3, I think, for sure.
Anybody else have any other questions, suggestions, any experiences? I mean, I know we're keeping it confidential, and Arnetta changed the name of her volunteer in particular, but anyone have any scenarios that they want to discuss and get some um, advice on how to handle that? I know I've heard a story, and I don't know how accurate it is. It's one of those, is this a folk tale or is it like a real thing? But volunteers who went to go deliver a meal opened the door, and the recipient of the meal was not wearing any clothing.
Yeah, so in that case, the volunteer may need some support again.
Mm-hmm.
That could be traumatic, So again, I think it's very important to have regular training with the volunteers. We found that when we had the trainings with the police department, they actually opened up and were like sharing best practices with each other. And so I think it's very important for volunteers, what they're doing. I mean, they're the hands and feet and a lifeline to a lot of people in the community. So that support, just like you have employee support that we need for our volunteers is constantly needed. And we know that it's very appreciated.
Absolutely. I'm curious from anyone who's on the call to type this into the chat box. Um, who is your emergency contact? So if a volunteer had something happen, MIFA's got a designated line. Do your volunteers have your personal cell number, your work cell number, your work office number, all three, maybe just one or the other? So if something was an emergency, is there a way that a volunteer can absolutely get a hold of you no matter what? I know quite a few of my volunteers from the past have my cell phone number, still get calls from previous volunteers because my phone number has not changed. We have a volunteer specialist. They have their phone number. Excellent.
That's Marcy Lynn. She's the inventor of the, she sent an image. She's the inventor of the rolling volunteer card.
Which is genius. I'm going to go back to that because I think this is an amazing, whether it's a cart or anything like that. So do all your volunteers have the sticker, or do they come through kind of and get the sticker and then have to return it at the end of their shift? So that way you can kind of save on a little bit of funds.
Most of the regular volunteers keep them, and yes, most of the seasonal ones that don't deliver on a regular basis do bring them back. And Marcy Lynn is giving out a lot of information in the chat.
Yeah,
It's
so
a lot of good, got a lot of good information in the chat.
Yeah, we got cell phone numbers, numbers on all the meal routes, just like you mentioned, cell phone and office numbers, so they got multiple ways to contact. It's a way to have any volunteer needs readily available. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that you even have snacks on there because you never know where the volunteer's coming from, and if they just need some crackers or something, right there, you got it. Volunteers have all three numbers, and they also have info to contact correct person at the district. Absolutely, if there's layers above you as well, got to have all of that information. Cold water and daily snacks. Perfect. Anyone else have any scenarios, questions, comments that they want to ask Arnetta? I do have an update that I want to share with everyone, but I want to make sure Arnetta is our main focus today. Okay, well, Arnetta, if you could, go ahead, sorry.
Here's more. Sharing volunteer safety is a good way to engage and retain volunteers. Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay.
How often do you recommend active shooter training for volunteers? And do you have any resources you can share with me to share with everyone on good active shooter trainings?
We actually got that from our sheriff's department. We're a municipality that has both city and Shelby County, so our sheriff's department helped provide the active shooter training. And what was the other question?
It was, do you have any resources? So your local sheriff's office,
Mhm.
um, there might be some online stuff that I thought you might know about. Oh, how often do you recommend doing it? So you
Oh,
have it,
yes.
but do you recommend annually, every 2 years?
So we, especially during the pandemic, had some staff changes. So really about every 2 years at least. Yes. Annually is good, but at least every 2 years.
All I see
And
on the chat, and everyone, you can unmute yourself as well, or raise your hand, and we can unmute you. And feel free to. Oh, I see. I just raised my hand. Let's see. I think that was me.
what are
Seeing no
some
questions.
crime prevention measures that you all have in your areas? Has everybody hadn't had any incidents?
Knock on wood, knocking on my head. I don't know of any incidents. We have had volunteers who do telephone reassurance who have heard participants say some startling things to
Mm,
where we've had to do adult protective service referrals to make
wow.
sure that those clients are safe for themselves and to others. That's
Yes,
the big one that I've noticed.
yeah, MIFA does also have a My Phone Buddy program. And again, it's basically the same thing, volunteers calling calling seniors. Yes.
Anybody else? Most of the time, our people have stories. Being shy today.
It's probably not the type of thing that people like to share, like
That's
it
true.
says, it's being recorded, but you could give a false name. Well, again, if there aren't any other questions or suggestions, thank you. Everybody in the Aging Network that's on this call, you guys are on the front line doing this important work as a lifeline to the community with our seniors. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
And we thank
Thank
you,
you.
Arnetta, for your time. Not done yet, so nobody leave. I got a couple updates I want to share with the group as well. Oh, I gotta exit out of yours, and then I'm gonna share mine. All right. And again, if you have any questions for Arnetta, she's going to hang around, so we can definitely circle back and answer those. So we're kind of multitasking a little bit. So I did want to share with you all some resources that are coming up if you're interested, and this is a lot of information. And no, I don't expect everyone to attend everything, but just if you don't know about it, you don't know if you can attend it or not, right? So the first one, if I can get my computer to work, which obviously I cannot. What is happening? Oh no, this is embarrassing. We practiced with Arnetta, and I didn't practice myself. Well, we're going to do one of these guys. I don't like doing it this way, and I apologize, but I'm going to try and make this as big as I can. So a new thing that I started to see if this is of interest to anyone, not a requirement again, but I created a volunteer opportunity post request form. So if anyone has a volunteer opportunity that they need help filling, whether it be a driver for a meal route or a My Ride or a board of director position that needs to be filled at a senior center or something along those lines, TCAD has our website. We have an account on Volunteer Match, and we have an account on the Tennessee Serves Network that if you fill out this form and kind of give me all the details that I need about your volunteer opportunity, I can post those out on our resources. And if we get any responses, I'll do the background screening, I'll send you those results, and I'll send you the person's information that comes through. That way you can then do your interview process if they have additional application procedures that they need to follow. They can do that directly with you at the program. A couple people on the webinar today have utilized this in a way. I know I've sent quite a few volunteers here recently over to the Southeast region, I think a couple in the East Tennessee region. So I'm hoping that this can be used for anyone in the aging network. I know this series has gone kind of almost nationwide. We have some people from other states who attend, which is amazing. We are going to stick with this with our aging network programs, unfortunately. But if anyone has any questions on setting up a volunteer match or a Tennessee Serves Network account, let me know and I can help you work on that for your agency as well. Just based on the chat with thumbs up or something along those lines, is this something that we're interested in, or don't send it to me, Sydney, I'm not interested. Thank you, Kristen. Good responses. I don't want this to be more work on you all, I guess is my fear. Okay, as long as it's not going to be more work for you guys, I will be sure to send that out. Actually, I'll put it in the chat because I can do that since my computer decides it doesn't want to work. That is not correct. And then I'll also put it in my follow-up email to everybody that goes out tomorrow. There we go. I am so sorry that my computer is just being crazy. There we go. It's very big type. Sorry about that. The next thing, I sent this, maybe I didn't send it out. I just found out about this a little while ago. Volunteer Pro, I don't know if anyone has worked with Toby Johnson before. She used to be a ship director, I want to say in Washington. She's in Knoxville now. She came to speak at the TFA conference this past year. She runs Volunteer Pro, and it's the month of love, February, Valentine's Day. Very cute. She's putting out a lot of free resources to anyone who goes to her Volunteer Pro website. Normally, you have a membership and you get a lot of information from Volunteer Pro. So any kind of freebies that I get from Toby, I always like to take advantage of and at least have them saved for any kind of future reference. So there's a lot of templates, a lot of tools, things of that nature. So if you're interested in that, you can get some freebies from her website. This is the one I did send to everybody. So Volunteer Match, they have a learning center and they have quite a few volunteer engagement webinars that are coming up. The one thing I do want to kind of stress about this is they do not record their sessions. They have repeat sessions. So you can see there was one, I believe, right before this webinar. So some of you may have taken advantage of that. They have 3 next week. They will be repeated. They just don't have the future dates yet. So I know I wanted to try and do managing difficult volunteer transitions, but something came up on Tuesday. I wasn't able to attend it, but hopefully I'll be able to attend that in the future. So if you're interested in that, I'll also have that link available to share with everybody. We have a couple conferences, and we know conferences come with money. So those first few resources are all free. Yay, start with the good stuff. Now we'll get to the expensive stuff. Volunteer Tennessee has a conference every year. Usually it's the Volunteerism and Service Learning Conference. This year, they've partnered with the National Service Learning Conference. So it's a much bigger event than I think what we've seen from Volunteer Tennessee in the past. It's from April 2nd to 5th here in Nashville, and it's $450 to register. So a little bit more expensive than what they've had in the past, but they are partnering to have that as a national conference. So that's probably why the registration fee has gone up so much. So if you're interested in that, this link is to information about the conference, and then there's some registration details on the second link as well. Another conference, Points of Light. I've attended this conference in person and virtually, and it is one of the best conferences I've ever attended. So it is June 14th to the 16th in Chicago, Illinois. It is a worldwide conference. I met people from Australia and the UK, and I just wanted to hear them talk all day. Not even about volunteer engagement, let's be honest. But it's a really great conference. You hear and learn about things going on all over the world, not only in the country, but all over the world. For nonprofits and government, which a majority of us are, I want to say, I don't know if we have any for-profits on the call, but your registration fee will be a little bit higher. For us, nonprofits and government, $575 for early bird registration, which is March 1st through March 31st. After that, starting on April 1st, no joke, no fools, it's $700. So if you want to attend, hopefully you can register sooner rather than later to attend that one. And again, you'll have the link so you can learn more about the conference itself. One of the last things I want to talk about, we've talked about this a few times on this series, but we started up the CVA Study Group again. So CVA is a Certified Volunteer Administrator. This is a international certificate through the Council for Certification in Volunteer Administration. Sorry, so many letters, got to remember what they are. Because we've talked before, there's really no credential. There's no degree that you can go to school, though I did find a certificate for volunteer engagement or volunteer management or whatever you want to call it. So this is kind of one of the big credentials that we can get in our field. So we do have a study group. We're starting tomorrow, kicking it off. Generally, we meet every other week, more frequently if needed, and we do that on Fridays, 9 a.m. Central, 10 Eastern. So we have 3 dates that we're going to be meeting before the first exam window, which starts April 1st. So if we need a couple more in between there, we can definitely set that up. I know we have at least one person in our aging network who's going to sit for the exam in April, so we're very excited about that, and we're going to do everything we can to get that person to pass the exam. In order to become CVA, you have to have at least 3 years of experience with volunteers, and that can be paid or as a volunteer. We do have volunteers who are volunteer coordinators for our programs. 30% of your job must be dedicated to volunteer resource management. That's currently. So I know some of you might say, oh, I'm a senior center director and I do so much. I don't do that much with volunteers. I bet you can probably justify 30% of what you do toward volunteer engagement and volunteer resource management. If you don't think so, we can talk about it and I'll give you my opinion. Don't know if it's going to be the right one. Kind of some advice to, if you're interested, how we can work that through. Your current resume, and then you have to have a letter of recommendation. There's always 2 testing windows every year, one in April and one in October, those first 2 weeks of each month. Generally speaking, the cost to sit for the exam is going to be $400 unless you're a member of organizations like Alive, Volunteer Pro that we talked about with Toby Johnson's group, Volunteer Match. There's kind of a laundry list that made the presentation really, really big, so I didn't put them all on there. But if you are a member of a volunteer-centric organization, kind of national organization, you may be able to get that discount. So if you're interested in learning more, please feel free to hang out with me and I can answer any questions about the CVA, or let me know you want to join the group and we will get you started and hang out with you tomorrow morning. And then I also wanted to remind everybody we have our next webinar March 9th. I always have to, because I'm so used to these sessions being in the morning, I always have to remember it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Central Time, 3 o'clock Eastern. We're going to talk about online volunteer training. So Dr. Paul Folkowski spoke 2 years ago on the series, and a lot of people really, really enjoyed his session. It was the one where we were all kicked out because one of my coworkers ended the meeting for everybody. That was fun. I still give her grief for that. But yeah, we've kind of moved to a more online training type system. So he has a lot of really great tips and tricks on how to keep volunteers engaged. You want 15 to 20 minutes videos and trainings, not hour and a half. And I know I'm guilty of doing that, so I need to get better. So if you're interested, I will send out the link to register for that webinar session for next month as well. And then here's my contact information. You all, I'm sure, have it. If you want my cell phone number, I will stop recording and give it to you because I do not want that on YouTube. But yeah, I know we're ending a little bit early today, so if anyone has any questions for me about anything that I discussed, or Arnetta, or if you want to share any stories, I think what I'll go ahead and do is I'll stop the recording now, and then maybe that'll prompt people who want to be a little bit more open with some stories and some questions. So Arnetta, thank you so much again for being with us, and we look forward to seeing everybody next month.